many people, they go out and invest. They just look for a broker and they find this person, they go invest the money in the market and they've got a stockbroker. And that's fine, you can do that. But when you start moving towards retirement, it's really important to start understanding the impact of risk upon your investments. For example, a lot of people don't realize this, but fees impact the risk that you take on. If you're paying 2.5% in fees and netting 1, that means the fees are getting 60% of your income. And when you have something like a bond, you might be paying anywhere from 1.5% to 2% in fees. So the big question you want to ask yourself moving forward is, how much risk do I want to take on? And the real question you want to ask yourself is, hey, would you be angry with yourself if you missed out on 10% gains? Or would you be more upset if you saw losses of 30, 40, 50%? So the question to yourself is, how comfortable are you with the risk moving forward? Before that, the most important thing is to understand the type of return you need in order to make your life work, retirement until the end of your days. So for more information on this, you want to go to the Silver-Haired Tsunami website. This is Steve Sexton with your tip of the day. Stick with us, we'll be right back. Hello, welcome back to this wonderful Memorial Day episode. We have a World War II veteran. His name's Jack Gutman. He's born in 1925. He's 90 years old. He's not 90 and a half, but he's 90 years old. We're just having fun there. Now, his dad signed him up to join the Navy back when he was 17. And he got trained to be a medic for the invasion of Normandy, and he landed there in between Utah and Omaha Beach. And after that invasion, he also went to Okinawa for that invasion. Now, he's dealt with PTSD for almost 66 years. He's one of the last living World War II veterans, and you'll see he's very lucid, he's a lot of fun, he's a comedian, he's a public speaker. He was recently video interviewed by the Smithsonian World War II Museum in New Orleans. So, Jack, Paula, welcome to the show.
Hi. Good. Nice to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
Well, you know what? It's always fun to talk to somebody, one, that's over 90, and two, that's a World War II veteran, because I just love the war era and the things that happened. Now, you know what? Tell me about what happened, you know what, being a 17-year-old, a medic, having to care for people on one of the bloodiest invasions that happened during World War II. What was that like?
Well, I will tell you one thing. The evening before, as the ships are coming into Normandy, and that evening, everyone is eating, they're feeding us whatever we want because we were going to go into the invasion. That evening, everyone felt pretty, jovial, some were a little somber about things. But the next day, when the invasion started, we thought the whole thing would be a piece of cake, because we came in with 5,000 ships, 45,000 landing craft, 11,000 airplanes, and 150,000 men that were going to invade Normandy. And we thought it'd be a piece of cake. Now, the key was this. The Germans had bunkers up over the beach, and they were concrete bunkers, and the planes, which they had 11,000 planes, as I said, were going over, and they were to drop the bombs and disable them. Unfortunately, there was cloud cover, and all the bombs dropped on the other side, and the invasion force coming in took the brunt of it, because all the machine guns and cannons, or whatever the guns they had, they were just mowing people down. They had a machine gun that would shoot off 150 bullets a minute. And as the guys came down off the ramp, it was like hell. It was like a nightmare. What we thought was going to be a piece of cake turned out to be a nightmare.
Now, didn't they do things in the water that would prevent the landing crafts from getting close onto the beach?
Yes, they had these girders and all kinds of things. So normally in the invasions, we come right on up to the beach, the ramp goes down, the people come out, and we just start taking, they're fighting, and then of course we, the medics, come in afterwards and we take care of the wounded. But they had these girders on the beach, right up there, and we had to be out in the water, and when we got out, you would be waist deep or right up to your chest. And unfortunately, with all the hell that broke loose, these guys panicked, a lot of guys panicked, and they jumped over the side of the ship, these landing craft. And they wound up going right straight down because they had these heavy packs.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, if they couldn't get the packs off, they drowned. So they never even got a chance to fight. It was just horrible. We lost so many men that it was like a horrible sight to see people screaming.
Now, as a corpsman, your job as a corpsman was to basically go around, render aid, bring people back to a landing craft that would take them back out to the hospital ship. Is that what you did?
Yes. My job was, I was going to be there temporarily because I was there to take care of the wounded, evacuate them, get them back to the ships, and they would go back to the other ships, and we would take them back to the hospital that we had set up, lots of hospitals back in England, where we would take care of them. And that's my job. And I went back after we secured the beach to take care of them. So, but that was exactly my job.
Now, I can't imagine the terror that you went through with being in war, and I hope I never have to deal with that. But what kind of symptoms did you experience after the battle?
At the time, I was on adrenaline and just, it was fear and then just moving on adrenaline. And it becomes very personal. When you got someone screaming, mama, mama, and you got a guy in your arm and he's telling you, am I gonna make it, Doc? Will I make it? And you look at him and you know he's gonna die. And you say, you're gonna make it. And it becomes so personal. And that's the problem I went through. And it stayed with me for many, many years, because between this and Okinawa, and it was just stay with me, it was just horrible.
Now, did you served in Okinawa as well as in Normandy?
We made the invasion of Okinawa. And
Now,
there we lost 14,000 men in Okinawa. In Normandy, we lost 9,000 men that died. In Okinawa, it was 62,000 wounded. It was just a horrible, horrible thing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Now, basically my understanding is you went through some PTSD. And how long did it take you to realize that you had the symptoms and to get help?
Well, we did not know there was no such thing as post-traumatic stress disorder. All we heard of this, that it was battle fatigue and you will get over it. Unfortunately, I never got over it. My Paula asked me one time, my daughter, she asked me, what causes, what is the symptom, what do you go through, when I was writing my book? And I didn't want to go into it. I just said it's bad flashbacks. And then she said to me, your people should know what it is. So, well, I finally sat down with great emotion and wrote this down. And what I was personally was feeling, the PTSD that I went through was everything is magnified. You go through over and over again the invasion and the people dying, the mines blowing up the bodies, and you see body parts. And it was really very emotional. And everything is magnified. You hear the guys screaming over and over again. So it was like a horrible, horrible nightmare. And so drinking took part of it for me to cope with it. I became a comedian and did shows, and I did 3 shows a night, and I wish I would have done 5 so I would not have to go back to bed and sleep and get those nightmares. 66 years this went on, and I sabotaged my life, almost my marriage. So it was a horrible, horrible thing. And I tell people, don't ever try to get some help.
How did you get help?
Well, finally, after 66 years, I was at the Veterans, and I finally told the guy, this is what I'm going through. And I thought they would put me in a mental institution, but he set me up with a psychiatrist and then a therapist, and I went through 3.5 years of therapy. The first session I went through with him, it was so horrible. He took me back, and it was so bad, he said, well, Jack, we'll melt down those memories from you. They're like ice cubes, we'll melt them down. And that was the problem. And I said to him, myself, I'm not coming back. But I fought it. 3 days later, I went back. I said, I'm gonna come. And I went through 3.5 years. I've never regretted it. It was the best thing that ever happened in my life.
What do you say to people who are going through that PTSD now?
I plead with them. I talk to veterans. I'll speak at different groups, and I tell them, do not hesitate to go. The veterans are open to you. They'll help you. And I tell people that I speak to that have gone through post-traumatic stress, post-traumatic stress, that didn't have to go through the war. They're going through other stresses. They need the help, and I guarantee it works. They'll have help, they'll have a happier life, and that's what I put in my book, that I want them to have a happier life, so therefore I put it in the book that it could be for everyone, not just veterans.
Jack, thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for your service, because without people like you that were in the service, it allows people like me to do the things I love. And for obviously people who might not like the military, allows them to say that. There's a lot that people in the military have done, and I want to thank you for your service and thank you for coming onto the show.
I thank you so much.
Now, if you would like to get a copy of Jack's book, you can go to our website. It says, One Veteran's Journey to Heal the Wounds of the War. It's about PTSD. And you want to stick with us because we have Paula Shaw who's going to talk about PTSD with veterans. So we'll be right back. Stick with us.
Hi, my name is Steve, and this is my wife Amy. We just had our solar panels installed by Baker Electric. Living out here in the East County, the temperatures can be in the mid-70s to over 100.
We didn't know a lot about solar. Speaking with our solar consultant, he was there to answer any of our questions that we had. He was always there when we needed him.
I think the fact that Baker does go in-house with their employees, everyone is very professional and very polite, and they're on budget. We couldn't have gone with a better company.
Wasn't that a wonderful interview with Jack Gutman, the World War II veteran? You know what, he spent 66 years going through PTSD, and we've got Paula Shaw here to talk to us about PTSD with veterans. What are the symptoms? You know what, whether you've been in combat or in a theater where there's a lot of stress, you want to see this segment because it'll make a difference in your life. But before that, I just want to send out a special shout out to the military. You know what, whether it be the Civil War, World War I, II, Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, the whole shot. If it wasn't for what you do, I wouldn't be able to do what I do. And I very much appreciate, thank you for your service, because you know what, in so many other countries, you have rulers that have people under their thumb. People have to sneak out of those countries to go to another country. And you know, we don't have to do that here in the United States. And it's primarily due to the military, even though, you know, some people might not agree. You have the ability to disagree here. In other countries, you don't. So thank you so much for the military. I appreciate you being part of the show today. And again, we have Paula Shaw. Paula, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Steve. Always my pleasure to be here.
Now, we want to talk about PTSD with veterans. Now, my understanding is what's the acronym stand for again?
Post-traumatic stress disorder.
Okay, and it basic for the military, it's being in a combat unit and experience some serious trauma or extended period of trauma. Is that correct?
Yes. And it can be triggered by trauma, whether you've experienced it yourself or seen it. Like seeing horrific things, like my dad talked about, you know, when you're seeing somebody be blown up or you're seeing something destroyed, that, even though you may not be part of that experience, you may be at a safe distance, that is still traumatic. And just to give you an idea of how huge this problem is, out of the 1.64 million soldiers that were sent into Afghanistan and Iraq, 300,000 have PTSD. And that's just the ones that have reported it. A lot of people don't report it.
So one of the big things for people to understand is it just isn't them. They're not going crazy. There's a lot of other people out there that have that same condition.
Absolutely.
And there is help and there's things that they can do. You know what, you know, one of the big things that I like to understand is what are the symptoms? Because they manifest themselves in different ways in different people.
Yes.
So what are those?
Well, I can tell you some that I've experienced with my own clients who came back from combat. One of the first ones that shows up, and oftentimes it's the wife who calls me and says, he's angry all the time. I mean, he's literally kicking the dog. What are we going to do? So anger, rage, anxiety, fearfulness. Of course, you know, we've all heard about flashbacks. That's a tough one. Sleeplessness, depression. And this sense of isolation, Because when you're in this place, you feel like, first of all, there's a lot of shame that goes with it, especially with men, because men think they should be able to come home and be guys again,
Yeah,
right?
put some dirt on it and move on.
Get over it, exactly. Just like your coach told you when you were a kid.
Yep.
But it's not that way. You know, this is a true trauma that impacted your brain and your psyche. And so it's not so easy to just get over it and move on in life. And people need to understand that. There's no shame in seeking help. In fact, it's pretty imperative that you do if you really want to heal in a productive way and not have it grow.
You know, one of the things that, you know, Jack said, he talked about the alcohol,
Yes.
How he wanted to, when as a comedian doing 3 shows, he would want to do 5 shows,
Right.
so he didn't have to go to sleep as much, so he didn't have to deal with it as much. And I think that's a big thing that a lot of people don't realize. It just can destroy or consume their lives, their marriage, their family, the whole shot.
Totally.
So-
It's avoidance. You know, all of that falls under the heading of avoidance. Whether you're getting high or you're getting drunk or you're keeping busy, you know, people do that. It's interesting because, you know, I wrote that book on grief, and grief is a kind of PTSD in many ways, you know, and these same symptoms show up when people are grieving. They try to avoid the grief, so they keep busy, they work hard, they maybe do use drugs or alcohol or work, you know, workaholic type work.
Yeah.
There's so many ways, but it's all about avoidance, the avoidance of pain, the avoidance of unpleasant experiences.
So once somebody says, okay, I've got this, what are the therapies that they need to, what are the, you know, what's the treatment like?
Well, one of the first things we really want is to get them to talk about what was the trauma. What was that horrific thing they can't get out, that picture they can't get out of their heads? And as awful as it sounds to talk about it, talking does help. There are also therapies in the field of energy psychology that I do a lot of work with, where we actually can calm a lot of those symptoms by tapping the same points they use in acupuncture. Amazing work is being done with that, and it's much more rapid. Individual therapy, group therapy can be really helpful because you don't feel so alone. You don't think, I'm the only one that can't figure it out, I'm the only one that can't get better. You know, that can be incredibly helpful.
Now, let me ask you this, where are the best places to go to get help?
Well, I think for veterans, start with the VA. It's affordable, if not free. They know this kind of thing inside and out. I mean, you know, PTA, there's so much help available. The therapists have very specific techniques for dealing with combat horrors and those kinds of things that have happened to military. There's also something I just actually learned about myself called MST, which is military sexual trauma. And that's for primarily women who have been raped or sexually abused by their brother soldiers. And they have specific treatment for that. The VA has really got a lot going on.
So they've got, oh, that's great to know. That's
Yeah.
great to know. Paula, thank you again for shedding light
My
on this
pleasure.
serious issue. You know what, out of 1 million people, 30% of them or more are dealing with PTSD. So people just need to know they're not alone and there's a lot of help they can get.
Absolutely.
You know what, Paula, thanks again.
My
If
pleasure.
you would like to get more information on this, please go to the Silver Haired Tsunami website. If you would like Paula's book, hey, pain, when will this grief ever end? Grief, when will it ever end? Please go to...
When will this pain ever end?
Thanks, Paula. Hey, sometimes you get messed up.
Or this title.
You know what? Next up, we have a female combat veteran, Jacqueline Atkinson. She's, you know, been through the military, went through the ranks. She was commissioned as an officer. She was wounded in Afghanistan, came back. She works with the military. Now she's running for Congress. So we have Jacqueline Atkinson coming up next. Stick with us. We've got a wonderful interview with a female veteran. Hello and welcome back. This is Steve Sexton on our military show here on Memorial Day. I have Jacqueline Atkinson, female vet, combat vet. You know what? She served in Iraq, Afghanistan. She was injured. She went back to the theater. She now works in the defense industry.
I do.
And you know what? You're even running for Congress.
Yes, yes, I am. Thank you, Steve.
Now, tell me about your military service.
Well, I was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps in the year 2000, and I was honored to become one of the first female combat engineer officers in the Marine Corps. And in 2001, 9/11 occurred, and my resolve and my commitment to my country was cemented. And the first orders I received as a platoon commander were prepare my men for combat because America was at war.
And then you went to?
We went to Iraq in 2003. I was part of the invasion, or known as Operation Iraqi Freedom. And I was in direct support to 1st Marine Division. I was a combat engineer company commander at that time with over 100 Marines under my command.
Now, what does a combat engineer mean?
We have certainly several missions or line of operations. The missions that I were responsible for directly were water purification and production in the Euphrates and the Tigris and Saddam Canal throughout Iraq. We also had combat engineering missions such as survivability or counter mobility. And then I also was in charge of explosive ordnance disposal. And that's one of the reasons why I ended up in the business of countering improvised explosive devices.
Okay, so basically, my understanding is you've gone back to Afghanistan and a couple other places since then to work with that. So basically, what you're doing right now is you're showing people or creating new technology to thwart the IUDs?
Right, so one of the things, when I left active duty service almost 10 years ago, I got in a small business and we developed and trained on mitigations against roadside bombs, otherwise known as IEDs. And we grew rapidly, and now what we do is respond to the improvised threat. I do maritime. I have several maritime national defense programs. I also do training and advising the Iraqi security forces. And we have another project in Afghanistan for spectrum analysis, actually, trying to locate homemade explosives.
Oh, wow. So there's equipment that you're developing that could identify homemade explosives?
Yes, absolutely. So that we haven't developed it, but we certainly work on it. But we work to try to mitigate the threats of improvised explosive device, particularly car bombs in the area. Since we've had the reduction of troops in Afghanistan, the Afghani national security forces have been attacked, and numerous have died. Thousands have died since we've done the drawdown of forces, particularly due to improvised explosive devices.
Wow, wow. You know what? I know everybody appreciates what you do because it allows them to come home.
Thank you, thank you.
And before, I don't want to forget this, we very much thank you for your service. All the things that you're doing make a difference, allows me to do what I do, allows me to say what I'd like to say. And I always say this, for all those people out there that don't like war, don't like the military, you know what, if it wasn't for you, they wouldn't be able to do what they're doing because there's so many other countries out there where the ruler actually has their thumb on everybody and people have to sneak across borders to find another place that they can have their freedoms. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you, and thank you to all the veterans that are out there. Freedom is not free, and due to the veterans, thank God that we live in a free nation today.
Oh yeah, no. Now, you're running for Congress.
Yes, I am.
Why did you decide to do that?
Because we need a change in leadership, particularly in the 52nd district, which is where I'm running. We need someone who is going to portray a strong national defense, a strong principled foreign policy. We need to ensure that we secure our borders, and we have to provide better care for our veterans. And I know you're doing, a military show today, and right now what's going on in the VA is absolutely disgusting. And I want to bring better care to the veterans because we owe them better.
So let's talk about that. What are the issues? I've seen them on TV and stuff like that, but what are the issues and how would you like to solve them?
Well, there's a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse in the system. So we'd like to clean up the VA, particularly hold those accountable, those executives accountable for that fraud, waste, and abuse. And right now we're seeing one of the biggest issues that the IG just came out with here in San Diego is that the wait times, the scheduled wait times are just over a month long. Sometimes some of our veterans are waiting over 30 days to get an appointment. And in a time where we're losing 22 veterans a day to suicide, that's not okay.
That's not okay.
No.
People need the help, and okay. Wow, that's
Absolutely.
crazy. Now, you know what? Should the U.S. be doing more to manage the political unrest in the Middle East?
Yes, we have to have some type of presence in the Middle East because of the fact we still have American interests. But I do not believe that's going to call for another war. We cannot do the job of the Iraqi security forces. We should train and advise, but one of the problems we're having over there today is that the training is just a byproduct. I can't train the will of the Iraqis to fight. And I also think that we should not be getting involved in any type of sectarian war between Saudi Arabia and Iran, and we should not take sides in these proxy wars that they're both capable of.
Which has taken place over the last 8 years.
God, ever since I think Muhammad, the death of Muhammad, actually, I think that the sectarian wars have been occurring.
Oh no, what I'm saying is the U.S. has gotten involved with that,
Yes.
and we should stay away.
Absolutely.
So how would you like to see, you know what, obviously we need a presence there because we have interests there. And we're obviously interested in world peace, so to speak. How would you see that whole makeup for you? You know, if you're going to be a congressperson, how would you like to see that play out?
Well, I think Reagan said it best, you know, strength through peace. And I think that our enemy definitely only understands strength. And so without strength, we're never going to be able to have peace. Right now, we need more strategic airstrikes. And with those strategic airstrikes, we need forward observers. We learned that in Vietnam. You know, we're wasting fuel, we're wasting money over there right now, so we need to have those strategic airstrikes and special forces. But we have to stop fighting this unconventional war through conventional means. So I would be one of those proud voices in Congress to ensure, particularly on the Armed Forces Committee, that we would never deploy troops without the tools and resources necessary, and that we need to have a comprehensive strategy. Today, our strategy is incoherent at best.
Okay. Now, what about, do you believe the U.S. government is prepared for, you know, the global military challenges coming forward?
Not at all. I do not think. I think because of defense cuts, that's hurt our military and weakened our military greatly. So we need a voice in Congress to also ensure that our military is at its full strength and that they have the tools, resources, and equipment necessary before they deploy. One of the things I saw when we deployed in the offensive in Iraq is that we did not have the tools or resources necessary. A lot of my brothers and sisters serving never even had armor. And if they did have body armor, they would be alive today. So I want to be a very vocal voice for our veterans and our military and ensure that they get what's due to them.
Jackie, thank you so much for
Thank you,
coming on the show. A strong woman in the military doing great things. I wish you well on your bid for Congress.
Thank you, Steve, so much for having me, and thank you for Military Week.
Oh, yeah. I looked forward to this. You know what, I was a kid growing up. I loved war. I obviously wasn't around when there was a war or old enough to volunteer to go into the service. But I very much appreciate all that the military does for me, the ability for me to do the things that I do, my kids do. So again, I want to thank you. I want to thank everybody involved with the military that's done something. We are not doing enough. There's many different things, like Jacqueline said. There's people who are committing suicide because they can't get in to see somebody who can help them. So we need to do more. If you'd like to do more and get more information about Jacqueline, go to our website at the Silver-Haired Tsunami. Stick with us. We'll be right back. What a great Military Monday. You know what? We had Jack Gutman, World War II veteran. We had Paula Shaw talk to us about PTSD and where you can get help. We also had Jacqueline Atkinson, first female combat vet in Iraq, Afghanistan. What a wonderful lady. She's running for Congress. If you want to get more information on PTSD, go to the Silver-Haired Tsunami website. Look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great weekend.